Hope it goes both ways.
Call the meeting to order. Do a roll call. Sherry,
Here.
Hayden.
Here.
Ben.
Here.
Vernon. Here. Showtime being gone, please. Introduction of new police officers. Chief,
Yes, sir.
you got the floor, sir.
I appreciate it.
Oh, the chief, let me do the pledge of allegiance.
Okay.
Yes, everybody stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Go ahead, sir.
All right, sir. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce a couple of our new officers. Really excited to have them. One of us comes to us with 15 plus years from the city of Mission, feather in our cap. The other comes to us from KCK, another feather in our cap. Good folks. I think that they're going to bring a lot to the police department. We're happy to have them. Nathan Fleming. John Smith.
John.
Ladies and gentlemen, your two newest officers. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard.
Welcome, sir.
Nice to meet you, sir. Nice to meet you, sir. Welcome.
Mr. Mayor. Sure.
We're a friendly crowd, shake away.
Everyone knows about one of my lovely girlfriend, Leah. She is a nurse on a children's nursery, that should be out transferring to the temple, so she, baby, mother and baby herself, so. It's important to hear.
Excellent.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
You might apologize, I'm sorry. If we get a couple pictures. Please say so much. Sorry.
Yeah, typically, whenever we have new police officers, law enforcement officers join the force, I'm a retired law enforcement officer myself after from the Department of Justice. But I've often said to any of the new police officers, two things that I would encourage you to highly keep in mind. And with the experiences that I'm hearing, this should not sound new to you. One is to stay true. Stay true to the charge that you've been given. Stay true to the information and direction that the chief is giving you. The other thing is, I never knew when I was going to make it home. It was always good to be able to come home. So with that, I'm telling you to stay blue. Stay blue, meaning stay blue to the responsibilities of serving and protecting. With that, I want to welcome you to this great organization.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the rest of the group. Chief, I have one more item. It is my distinct honor to pass along some information on February the 21st of this year. SRO Lemansky happened to be in the area of case 7-ish, 130 out by Sandstone. She was northbound on K7 when a motorcycle passed her at a high rate of speed, split the lanes in an attempt to get in front of her and keep on going. The motorcycle rider clipped the back end of a pickup that was in the opposite lane. So
didn't do a very good job of splitting the lanes. The video is unbelievable, and I'll leave it at that. The in-car video that you all were so gracious to approve. Absolutely no doubt about what happened. The motorcycle essentially disintegrated. Officer Romansky acted quickly. She stopped the vehicle, turned on her emergency equipment, got traffic moved over, called immediately for EMS and other units. She was in Bonnet Springs jurisdiction, got out of the vehicle, and I will spare you the details, but she spoke to the gentleman that had crashed, had some fairly significant injuries. Not only did she calm him down, but she was able to take his belt, apply a tourniquet to his leg. And we believe that through her actions, her quick thinking, that she saved that gentleman's life. So it is my distinct pleasure to present the first time as achieved the life-saving award to Officer Jennifer Moransky. Positive that we are so fortunate to have her. So fortunate. No, really. Like a thought. Long story short,
Good thankful for that. I think the opportunity, I'm speaking probably for my fellow officers, just the opportunity to do something versus just standing there waiting. It was nice to actually be able to do something, so.
Thank you so much.
Need pictures.
All of us have so many offices. Really nice.
not a request.
Not a request. Says the chief.
Here, yeah, here. Just don't shove that. Officer Romansky, do you have family here? You want to introduce?
I do, my fiance, Vinny Ness, he's the assistant chief, or colonel now, sorry, colonel, basically, and then my granddaughter, Braylon. she needs to-
Welcome.
Braylon.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate everything you do for us.
You know, tip of the hat to the city administrator, city council, the mayor. Lots of people talk about family environment, you know, that collaborative effort, but I can tell you that this is my 28th year and I've never, marketing it, never worked at a city where I felt so welcome, and I think the rest of the police department would echo that.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
You are welcome. Thank you for everything you guys do.
All right.
She's a doll.
Yeah.
Thank goodness that you do.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks for coming.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of proclamations to go through. Hayden, you want to start out with National Child Abuse Prevention Month, Leavenworth County Court Appointed Special Advocate, CASA.
Whereas our children are our most valuable resource and will shape the future of our communities. And whereas the majority of child abuse and neglect occurs when people find themselves in stressful situations that are preventable, but without community resources and support, they don't know how to cope. And whereas child abuse and neglect not only directly harm children, but also increase the likelihood of criminal behavior, substance abuse, health problems such as heart disease and obesity, and risky behavior such as smoking. And whereas child abuse and neglect is a community problem that can be reduced by making sure each family has the support of prevention programs created among social service agencies, schools, faith communities, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. And whereas together we can strengthen and support families in raising their children in a safe, nurturing environment.
Now therefore, I, Dick Drennan, Mayor of the City of Basehor, Kansas, hereby proclaim April 2023 as National Child Abuse Prevention Month. In witness whereof, I set my hand and affix the great seal of the City of Basehor, Kansas, this 22nd day of March in the year 2023. The next one is proclamation recognition of USD 458's Pam Chenoweth. Sherry?
Yeah, whereas Pam Chenoweth has served 24 years with the USD 458 Basehor Linwood School District. She has served under 6 superintendents, starting first as a receptionist and then moving to accounts payable, then to payroll, insurance and benefits as a business manager and board clerk. And whereas the City of Basehor recognizes with respect and admiration the contribution of those who dedicate their time and services within our community. And whereas USD 458 notes that Pam is always gifting her coworkers during the holidays or for no reason at all with cheesecakes, quilts, handbags, and many other handcrafted goodies, decorating and catering breakfasts, lunch, and dinners for staff and the USD 458 School Board of Education. And whereas Pam has acted with efficient, effective, and dependable delivery in anything she does, the district recognizes her as an employee who has helped it remain in compliance with the Kansas State Department of Education with her proficient budgeting skills and outstanding record keeping. And whereas Mayor Drennan and the Basehor City Council for the City of Basehor wish to honor Basehor resident and soon to be USD 458 retiree Pam Chenoweth for her service to this great community. And whereas Pam Chenoweth will be celebrating her retirement on March 31st, 2023 to spend more time with her husband, 6 children, and 12 grandchildren.
Now therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Dick Drennan, Mayor of the City of Basehor, and on behalf of the Basehor City Council and the citizens of Basehor, honor Pam Chenoweth for her dedication and generosity and wish her a joyful retirement and hereby proclaim March 31st, 2023 as Pam Chenoweth Day. In witness whereof, I set my hand and affix the great seal of the City of Basehor, Kansas. This is the 22nd day of March in the year 2023. You guys want to come up?
I think it's nice, but we are gonna bring it back for photo op tomorrow.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Thanks for coming too.
And the only thing I would correct is, I don't know that Pam served under any of us as superintendents. We all did what Pam told us.
There you go.
That's funny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a presentation from the Leavenworth County Transportation CIP Projects Priority Stakeholder Meeting.
Good evening, Council. Jeff McCarroll with Kimley Horn and Associates. You know, after all those great stories, now you hear from a transportation engineer. My apologies. Happy to be here today to kind of give an update on where we stand on our project to really help prioritize improvements and projects in the region of Leavenworth County. So all around us. Next slide, please. Today we'll focus on a little bit of our project approach, where we stand today, talk about some of the engagement efforts we've already been through, talk about a list of projects. As we started this process, we had more than 20 years of different studies and projects that have been looked at all throughout the county and the different cities. We have actually consolidated those. Some of those projects overlapped. Some of them were in conflict with each other or close to each other and didn't make sense to all happen at one time. So we've consolidated that based on a lot of public input. And then we're going to talk through how we're looking at prioritizing this and the tool we're developing to really get some feedback and have some conversations. This is meant to be a discussion. We're not asking to take any action this evening. So please feel free to ask any questions you might as we go through this process. So as we started this process, we really had two parallel paths we started out on. One was we started to look at, if you take a look at a project, what are the technical criteria that project will be evaluated with? And it varies. It varies based on what the federal government on federal competitive grants looks at, or the state of Kansas through KDOT's IKE program or their transportation program, what they typically look at, or through the Mid-America Regional Council, which is Mark's serves to really be that flow through for other federal funds that are based. But that's their priorities. That doesn't necessarily reflect the priorities of your community. So we wanted to give that opportunity to weigh in there as well. So that was one path we started with. And at the same time, we really started to dig into all those previous plans that were out there and really start to engage and understand and evaluate how those operate. Do they all make sense today? Are they in conflict with each other? Are they still valid to really pursue and move forward? The next slide kind of tells you where we're at today. So we have started to work towards producing a tool to evaluate all these different projects and give guidance on where the community as a whole, and by that I mean the entire Leavenworth County community and all the cities might start, back up one slide, might start to look at how we're going to evaluate those and come up with some prioritizations. You'll see that there's a little feedback loop, if you will. We're open to comments. In fact, we've heard comments today and even Monday when we met with a lot of the governmental staff liaisons or leaders that would provide an input. So we're looking for that conversation. When that goes through, we'll come back and we'll present and be talking again with you later on, and we'll touch on that time frame here in a second. So to hit briefly kind of some of the meetings we've held, we had a series of virtual stakeholder meetings that were conducted last fall in October and early November. We met with some existing industries. We met with economic development corporations and port authorities. We met with chambers of commerce, the school districts, industry and community developers. We met with citizens and some other recognized and identified community leaders. And elected officials, not necessarily elected officials here within the county, sometimes in neighboring communities as well as KCATA and the Kansas Turnpike Association. Actually. Next slide. Some of the themes we heard from the stakeholders. One was there was a desire to see that increase in connections between communities. How do we get from communities within Leavenworth County? A lot of importance of K7 right now is that vital link to so many on this community. We had a lot of support for bicycle accommodations, including from some of the developers in the area. You see that is an incentive to get people to want to come either invest in this area or to build properties here. Conversations about that balance of quality of life with a rural environment. How do you accommodate both of those there? We invited neighboring counties and communities in as well to talk. MoDOT participated and we had a conversation with them and they were clear that they aren't really, it's not in their plans today to see 152 extended west of 435 at this point. Doesn't mean it's off the table by any means, but it's just not on their plans today. Although they did acknowledge that Parkville might have some interest to see those connections maybe also. We saw that there was a desire for some enhanced regional access, other ways to get to either Route 152 in Missouri or the KCI Airport, or south of DeSoto and the new Panasonic plant. One of the driving comments here, and we also heard from others, other meetings we had, was that need for really to prefer improving existing roads over building brand new facilities on new alignments. Next slide, please. We asked these groups, what do they think is important to them? What are their priorities? And this will come clear as we move forward here. And you'll see that economic impact was the highest. So if we have a transportation project that could enhance economic activity, that tended to be the highest ranking criteria that they put their weight behind. Equity or access to jobs. Is it a project that's going to make it where people can get to jobs and work easier? That also ranked quite high. And then congestion and safety falling behind. Next slide. We have public meetings, one of them here in this city as well on November 9th and 10th. We had about a little over 70 people show up in person. And November 10th, by the way, was a very rainy day. So we still had a good crowd representing here at Baser. Some common themes was that access to Panasonic and DeSoto. What can we do to expand and enhance that? We heard a lot of specific spot projects where people thought, hey, we've got a curve here on a road that needed some work. We've got this intersection that's just tough to get around. The desire for bicycle routes and how to accommodate that throughout the community. A desire for a visibility in the process. So we heard this a lot from the public that they wanted to be sure as we go through these steps, and we're going to be very open with our calculations and how we look at things and how we score, that they can understand how priorities were developed and where people rate them. And there was also little support of the Patriot Highway. So this was a proposal that had come out largely on new alignment, largely through a floodplain that I think some of you remember we actually went to a vote here and there wasn't much support for that project at all. And that was almost unanimous. Next slide. They had a different shift in priority. So economic impact remained one of those top criteria for the public. But we saw mobility, the ability to get around, and congestion and safety ranking above the equity or jobs access as they looked at that. Slide. We had an online public meeting, so people couldn't make it to one of the meetings in person or weren't part of the stakeholder groups. They could also participate. We had several hundred people actually go through the website in the public meeting. We had 55 people provide comments to those. A lot of those common themes that we've talked about before, the support for some sort of outer loop to 435 that would make sense, but only if we kept that basically on existing alignments. Spot safety concerns were identified. And again, there wasn't much support for expansion projects, and this had been identified years ago with some KDOT projects to provide new facilities headed to the west. And lastly, that desire for bicycle accommodations, to keep in mind for that came up. This one kind of had a shift in priority. So online safety became the top priority for the people who weighed in at that location, followed by economic impact and mobility and congestion to a degree. Slide. So we talked about those initially identified projects, and that's the map you see up here. We had quite a few of them that were out there that were based on previous studies that we looked at. We shared this list and with some detailed maps for the public that they could weigh in and make comments on. And we had in this list a lot of overlapping corridors, improvements that were close to each other, that you wouldn't do all of these. It just didn't make sense. So we started to prioritize and look at what was a consensus to move forward. The next slide. And that developed into what became this consolidated project map. that is shared. I believe it's on our webpage right now that we have, where we've identified 43 separate projects. Now, a couple notes on that, those 43 projects, some of them could be combined. For instance, we got several interchanges along K7 that we've talked about being independent. You could look at that as one big project as well. And there are other big projects out there that could be divided. If you take a look at the line in the red there, moving down to orange, that's the 158th Street or 20th Street corridor. That could be broken up, and you certainly probably wouldn't build all of those enhancements at one time. That kind of gives you that idea where that could be. Now, there's a lot of projects. They still add up to just under $1.5 billion in construction costs in today's dollars. Those projects they range from less than $500,000 for some of the smaller projects to over $350 million for some of the larger ones. So we're looking at a lot of projects and a lot of range and cost as we move forward. One of the things as we looked at this was really how do you measure the impact of a project? And there's some very easy ways to calculate things like safety impacts and delay impacts. But one of the things we took a look at is what we call travel shows. And that was, if you take a look, and this is an example from the city of Lansing, where can you go in 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes? And as we look at projects, how might that change? And what does that do to your ability to access jobs, your ability to access amenities and to attraction zones, or the ability for jobs or businesses in your community to reach out to people outside of your community? So we're given one example here, and the next slide will show what happens if we pursue and compare, for instance, the construction of the Eastern Gateway. This is the new Missouri River crossing that's been talked about that would line up with 152 highway. You see from the left, the travel shed, if you will, today, and how it changes when you see that project. Slide. And overlapping that, you can see that if we talk about a project, we can start to understand what is the impact in access to population, what does it mean for access to jobs, and what are those key destinations now that you can get to more efficiently than you could before. So we start to see those tangible measures. That was one example, but these are the actual all, and we'll step through these a little bit more and try to keep this moving. But we'll talk about traffic operations and user delays. How do we measure those? Safety, access to amenities and population, economic development and job access, equity, and what that means. And that's actually largely federal definitions as you pursue some federal funding opportunities, sustainability and resiliency, and some of those other factors, and finally cost. Slide. So this is a snippet of the tool that we're developing. This is actually going to be made somewhat available online that you can experiment as you start to weigh your different priorities. And we'll step back to this here in a little bit to show you some examples as we move forward. Let's first talk about traffic operations and user delays. How do we look at those? We start to look at the traffic volumes that are around that projected area. We begin to look to see how do those actually, how close to capacity does that make those facilities? And then what gets better should you do? So if you were to build, for instance, the K7 and parallel interchange, you might see a delay reduction along K7 in that area of just under 2,000 hours in a day of delay that you see. You can start to put some quantitative numbers to that. What's that mean economically? But you see that go forward. We take those and then we start to normalize each of those ratings to develop what was that traffic or user score for that project. How does that actually improve traffic operations? Slide. When we start to look at access to opportunities, which is access to jobs, economic development, freight, several other categories we start to look at. One was, what was the increase in population within a 30-minute drive? Those travel sheds we talked about. What was the increase in jobs and how we start to measure that if you were to build that project? Any increase in destinations within 30 minutes. Increases in acres of commercial or industrial development. So are you making it easier for people to get to businesses as you move forward? Number of census blocks within a 15-minute drive of the I-70 interchange. This has to do with the ability to get reliable freight movements in and out. And then also taking a look at destinations within 15 minutes. And are you located in the proximity to schools or recreation, parks and recreation areas, which become criteria that some of the federal funding programs also have. Slide. As we weigh those, we kind of broke those up into two different categories. We divided what was your scoring for population and amenities access, which is the lighter color. So that's the increase in population, increase in destinations, increase, proximity to schools and parks, for instance, that became the scoring method for that. And then for the economic development, we looked at the increase in job access, increase in commercial and industrial access, an increase in block groups within that proximity of an interchange. So we began to develop those scores as we move forward. We're hitting a lot, so if you guys want to pause at the time, let me know. Slide. We took a look at equity. Equity is a primary concern with the federal government when we look at some of the national competitive grants. These are grants for large projects and comes into the areas of persistent poverty, historically disadvantaged communities and opportunity zones. I will tell you that those in Leavenworth County really just exist in the city of Leavenworth itself. So we don't have projects that are within that area, but we can develop a score here to understand where those come into play. Slide. Which is where this kind of moves forward here. For sustainability and resiliency, we're looking at changes in miles traveled, which is somewhat correlated then to pollution, what that could mean. We also took a look at, are we in a location in which we're going to repair or replace a bridge that we already know is starting to reach the end of its life? Likewise, are we looking at something that's going to mitigate a low water crossing so that it's more resilient when we have major storm events? And is it a project that's located along a planned bike route in either the county's comp plan or the regional councils? Likewise, are you filling in gaps for some of those that aren't auto-dependent uses? And that kind of brought us to that sustainability and resilience score as we look at those projects. The safety metric is something we can actually take a look at what has been our crash patterns in those different corridors. We've done a lot of research actually as a nation to understand that if we make certain improvements, that if we widen a road with no shoulders, we put on rumble strips, we can expect crashes to reduce by a certain amount. So we can take a look at the projects and say, we're going to mitigate some safety issues. And we can pretty confident we're going to see a reduction in crashes, reduction in fatalities and injuries. How do those projects correlate? And that brings us to our safety score when we look across the slide. And then we've got some other categories that we want to take a look at. One of those is the number of jurisdictions that crosses both the state of Kansas, even at the Mid-America Regional Council, the federal government. If a project is impacting more than one community, it's looked on more favorably. So as you think about things like that, if you're going and competing locally, regionally, on the state level or nationally, how does this project, how would this compete on those thresholds? The other areas we started to take a look at is project readiness, or really where this project might fall in environmental clearances, which is a requirement of federally funded projects as well. And then those little cost issues also. So with that, we're able to set up and put in a tool, and we've kept the project list name off this particular because we wanted to just kind of show you a couple of examples here of what that means. If you were to put certain in this yellow boxes that you'll see here, if you can go from 0 to 100 and you've got that many points you could put to different categories, what does that do? What does that change? Does that change how your priorities? Tools also developed that you could go in and you could say, what if we only want to look at new major roads or new interchanges? How do those all compare to each other and start to think that way? And as we move forward and take that, how does that change this slide? This is an example of a quick shift, and actually we probably talk back and forth between these two here. The first one was where you saw traffic operations were at 15% and safety at 20. A few different, well, what happened if those change and you start to see there's some shifting of the priorities of projects depending on what you put your value and where you put that priority. Next slide. Well, there. So what have we heard so far? We've heard a desire to look at both combining some projects as well as ability to divide them as we evaluate these projects. We've also been asked to put in a little different measure for cost effectiveness. So if we think about some of the tangible cost benefits that are out there and compare that with the cost to build, how do these projects rank up? So you're going to have that assessment of, yeah, we know this project has a lot of value, but bang for the buck, where is that compared to other projects? We've also talked about we've been asked to add some additional information on resiliency, paving gravel roads. What does that mean? Eliminating those low water crossings. Taking into account the economic impact, particularly of new interchanges. So when we look at economic impact, we looked at the zoning and the comp plans that were out there. But what happens if you build a new interchange on I-70, even if the comp plan right now only says it'll be agricultural? The reality is that if you've got undeveloped land around an interchange, you can expect over time to see some more intense development. And then the other axis was regarding freight. We were focused really on what does that impact I-70, which is a designated freight route. KDOT realities 435 is also important, so let's look at that. With that, we went through and we wanted to show you a few draft examples here of what can change here. So we took the input and what we heard from the stakeholders and the public about their priorities and assigned those to this model to show you just a draft of how some of these projects might line up. One thing you'll notice is that they tend to be grouped together. And while depending on how you change those ratings, one project may rise up or down a little bit, same 2 or 3 projects always seem to be at the top. And there's a lot more kind of in the middle and a few at the very bottom. All of this will be something that you can go back and take a look at in more detail. Next slide. This is an example if we set those public priorities. So what do we hear from the public in the public meetings and all that? How did they put that priorities? How did projects rank? Now, this is a little small to see here. But on that example, what you saw was the 158th or 155th Street corridor, which includes that new I-70 interchange. It's been talked about before. That actually rose to the top. Followed by improving K5 and the connection from 435 over. Further down, you can go down the list of different connections. One of the projects we did divide because it had it worked with both K5 and the Eastern Gateway project was the extension once you cross the river, extending that gateway up further for a new route up into Leavenworth, kind of parallel in K7 from east. When you change the priorities a little bit for the stakeholders and what they had ranked, you saw that those K5 improvements kind of flipped and the 155th, 58th kind of went down a little bit. And then if you're to aggregate those together, you see a slightly different result as well. So this is kind of given those tools that you'll be able to start to see what did we hear about different priorities? What is, you as a council, what is your priorities and what does that impact on the scoring? But also if we look at those different federal, state and regional funding, where they put priorities, what projects would probably score the best there? So that you can make informed decisions going forward that as a region, what projects do you want to prioritize and how do you take those next steps? Speaking of next steps, we're going to do some more stakeholder. We had a little bit of stakeholder engagement earlier today. We're going to be doing that. We've got several meetings the first week of April. meeting with a official briefings like this to gather input. We'll then take that based on what we've heard and we'll have an online meeting where people can see this material. You all as well are going to be able to play around with the tool to see, as we change priorities, what does that mean? What does that mean? If we think something is safety is the most important or economic development, we want to weight higher. Does that change what those priorities would be? And how do you take those next steps? Our goal is to have a draft report available in May so that we can be coming back here to get one more update from you all in late May or early June. And hopefully finalize our project in June, depending on schedules and agendas, June or July to get through this process, which puts you in a position in which coming this fall, Canada's DOT will be coming out with another round of what they call their local consult projects, which is to say, reaching out to the communities, what do you feel is important? What projects do you want to say? This is the opportunity for you to take this work and really go to KDOT and say, as a region, we've met together and we think these are the top priority projects. That carries a lot of weight with KDOT. KDOT's been participating in these sessions as well. So with that, I know we went through a lot here. A couple of your members actually joined us earlier today and asked some questions, but we're certainly open to questions, your thoughts, any input you might have for us so we can make this a strong project as we finalize.
Does anyone have any questions at this time?
No, good. I got to ask him earlier. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just told the city administrator that I heard some of this yesterday at Port Authority, and I know I'll hear it again. So I have time to formulate questions if they should arise.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Moving on, call to the public. Public comment will be allowed at the mayor's discretion during regular meetings. This is exclusive of items requiring a public hearing. The mayor reserves the right to limit the total amount of time for public comment. Please remember the city council and staff will not engage in dialogue or debate with any speaker pertaining to any comments made. If anyone would like to speak at this time, please wait to be recognized by the mayor. Remember to state your name and your address for the record. If you're online and would like to participate, please type your name in the chat and wait to be recognized before unmuting and speaking. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on anything on the agenda? Marty? Go ahead.
Marty Strife. I live at 4717 Augusta Drive, Pacer. I own the Falcon Lakes Golf Club. The item that I wanted to address with the council is ordinance number 874 regarding considering prohibiting parking along Falcon Lakes Parkway. And that would be from Highway 7 to 147th Street. That's a 1 mile stretch. And I'm pretty sure there's no other parking concerns other than at the driving range, getting to the heart of the matter. And so it has existed since, of course, was constructed in 2002 with infrastructure. I bought the property in March of 2009. So for 14 years, and on the basis of buying the property, my assumption was there was parking allowed and has been for 14 years along Falcon Lakes Parkway. So again, for the 1 mile stretch, to my knowledge, it's just, I assume the concern is at that area, which is about 300 to 400 feet. We have anywhere from 6 to 14 cars maybe a day that park there. Many people get their golf cart from the clubhouse and go down to the range. I have had discussions with the staff in the past about some concern about the parking. We have too. We had a plan. If you're aware, we submitted an application to build a parking lot. We've also submitted an application to develop 2 lots. The back of the driving range that would be adhered to the zoning and the building codes. Funds from that to build a parking lot. What I was surprised about, I wasn't contacted about this consideration to prohibit parking. I understand it. the concern. But again, it's existed for 21 years. More houses been added, there's that concern. So I just would like the opportunity to suggest, this came up when I got a work session a week ago. Today it's being considered by you to be passed. I don't know when it would take effect, how soon, what kind of time reaction we'd have to, it's gonna have an impact on our business. How do we get people there? We need to build a parking lot, cost that parking lot and all those type of things. And putting a parking lot in, we can't raise range balls or green beans or things like that. So I'm on board to trying to understand planning. What I'm asking for is more time and consideration with the staff to figure out a plan and an implementation before signs are put up and people are being ticketed along the street. That's my request. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody online, Kathy or Cameron? Nope, okay. All right, moving on to item number 7, consent agenda. I need a motion to approve this consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve consent agenda.
I have a motion to her second.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll take a vote. Vernon.
Aye.
Ben.
Aye.
Hayden.
Aye.
Sherry.
Aye.
Passes 4-0. No unfinished business, Leslie. Okay.
No.
Okay, new business. Item number 9, city liability insurance 2023-2024 renewal, J.R. Riley.
Good evening, everybody. J.R. Riley with the Riley Company. I know I was here 2 weeks ago. Went through the proposal and the spreadsheet here. Nothing has changed in that 2-week time period. 2 quick comments. We did at the meeting talk about looking at some options for the professional liability. We were unable to come back with anything that enhanced the coverage or was competitive as what we currently have now. We are going to look at that again next year when we kind of market the entire program. One of the things I failed to mention at the work session 2 weeks ago, and it's just an option, but if you were looking to save some money, your current property deductible is $10,000. If you wanted to raise that to $25,000, it's a savings of about $10,000 in premium. Again, optional, but obviously, as we talk about, premiums going up, costs going up, I do like to try and find some ways to maybe mitigate that cost. If you were to ask my recommendation, I would say, I think it makes some sense to do it. That's a pretty good savings for that deductible. I think there will probably be a time in all candidness that the insurance companies will make you go to that type of a deductible. That's just seems to be the trend, but again, it's an option for you just this year if you want to do it. I just wanted to present it.
Does anybody have any questions on anything? You don't. Vernon.
No, I do not.
Okay. Sherry.
I think we asked them at the work session, but
Ben, you have anything?
I guess the only question maybe I would have for city staff is just the option at hand. I mean, it sounds like that's a $5,000 delta. I mean, moving from a $10,000 deductible to $25,000 and savings of $10,000. Is that something that we want to take on? Because we have immediate savings right there of $10,000. It's basically a $5,000 gamble, I guess. Look at it in that manner.
Yes, Council President Sims, staff would recommend that we do as Mr. Riley has suggested and increase the deductible for the premium savings.
Does motion need to change in any manner? Or can we just approve it as is?
So our recommended motion to you is to authorize staff to negotiate on your behalf and to enter into the renewal. And so based upon that direction, we would enter the premium savings.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thanks, Jar.
Thanks, JR. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Need a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the city liability insurance for 2023-2024 renewal with J.R. Riley.
I have a motion to her second.
I'm so sorry if I might, we would ask that you authorize staff to negotiate and then finalize the renewal.
With the authorization of the staff to negotiate the renewal and to possibly
Execute.
execute.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
the
you.
renewal. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will
Small
second.
one.
Motion and second. I'll take a vote. Ben.
Aye.
Hayden.
Aye.
Sherry.
Aye.
Vernon.
Aye.
Passes for all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, JR. Moving on to item number 11, ordinance number 874, no parking signs along Falcon Lakes Parkway.
Did we jump to it?
Oh, okay. Go back to item number 10, ordinance number 873, amendments to the city code related to permitting and building or construction of work performed by a property owner.
Sorry about that. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Yes, thank you. As you all recall, we brought to you 2 weeks ago at the work session, some proposed language amendments to part of our code. Just in doing a kind of a thorough overview of all of the different regulations and requirements that we have. And just a brief overview, we determined that there were some inconsistencies in this section of the building code that allowed for work by property owners. We wanted to tighten that up and make it very clear what that meant. And then also building permits required and who needs to be pulling those building permits. It doesn't need to be the property owner or the contractor doing that. The council did direct staff to look at adding a provision that specifically pulled out property owners who offer properties for lease or for rent and allowing them to also do work on their own homes. The current code states that it has to be a home that you intend to live in. Staff went back to the table, and as we got to talking about that, we determined that there may be an administrative burden that is placed upon staff to determine, well, are you really renting that out? What exactly does that mean? Is it 6 months out of the year, or is it more than 6 months out of the year? And we weren't sure that that was necessarily the direction that the city council wanted us to head in. So this particular update to the code does not include that additional language relating to renters and property owners who offer their properties for rent. We will certainly go back to the table if you direct us to, but we did want to bring it to your attention that we do think that it would cause an administrative burden that is unintended, certainly. There was also discussion about instead of only limiting it to one home per year, that it could be limited to 2 homes per year in the event that, you know, maybe someone was planning on selling their home down the road and they were also wanting to stay in the city of Basehor and upgrade or remodel a home that they had purchased there. So, you know, making sure that people have a little bit of latitude. That is in this code update. And then additionally, the final section, section 878, we wanted to clarify that in the event that the staff determines that someone is violating section 8.4, that staff would have the authority to cease granting permits to them under that particular section of the code. And so we did clarify that, and then also added that there could be additional penalties as permitted by law. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Anybody have any questions from Crystal?
No, I appreciate those adjustments based on the discussion.
Anybody else? I have none. Okay. I need a motion. Thank you, Crystal.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we approve ordinance 873 to amend the city code as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
No.
I'll take a vote. Sherry?
Aye.
Hayden?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Vernon?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Now, number 11, ordinance number 874, no parking signs along Falcon Lakes Parkway from 147th Street east to K7 Highway. And discussion on that. Does anybody have a presentation on that or? Gene?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As presented at the work session, information that was presented off of traffic count and volumes. We presented ideas of the posting of the no parking sign. We have seen parking from 145th Street on the west end as well as Aspen Drive. We don't know if those are construction workers or what, but there has been numerous vehicles even parking on the west end that causes site issues for motorists.
Anybody have any questions?
I guess I might have a couple things based upon some of the comments. So I understand, when there's tournaments or activities, where would be overflow parking for the current lot. So is the area down by the swimming pool, is that anything that would be allowable, that it could be utilized for individuals? And if so, like how many lots are there? How many parking lots, spaces? And then the other comment about time to make changes so that the owner could adapt. I don't know that we talked about that. So just a thought about, if this is determined, how much time would we give to make adjustments that might be needed?
Any more discussion? I don't know, are you directing that to somebody particular?
Well,
Sure.
I assume, I don't know if Jean's handling this or city administrator's handling it. It was just a couple questions that I don't think we discussed 2 weeks ago. And honestly hadn't thought of it until the gentleman came up and spoke. And so I just kind of want a little clarification if we could help, if there's some way in that property to ease parking, or even a amount of time to help the individual. Just some questions, thoughts.
So I will, thank you, Councilmember Sandiford. As it relates to the effective date of when no parking would become effective, your ordinance as it's written today, and similar to most ordinances, is they become effective upon publication. If the city council desired to modify that date, we would need to adjust the ordinance to reflect that, which we could. So that's the short answer to that question. Specific to the opportunity to park or perhaps share parking with the swimming pool, it's my understanding, and Councilmember Sims may have to correct me, I believe that parking lot is privately owned by the homeowners association. And so if there were going to be a shared parking arrangement, that would be something that Mr. Strife would have to negotiate independently with the HOA. And I would just note, this is definitely a delicate balance, and certainly a tough situation, because we do, as a city and certainly as residents there, and I'm sure Mr. Strife hears the concerns and the complaints. I'll just be very candid, the complaints about vehicles and overflow parking that is occurring on that street. Particularly when it is a very busy golf day and the pool is super busy and you've got cars, golf carts, pedestrians, everybody is wanting to access the same area. There is no doubt that by placing no parking signs, it will create a pressure, even more pressure on the ability to park cars for all of those amenities that I just noted. And it will impact not just the golf course, but it will impact the families that I see that pull up in their cars and start getting out at the pool. So it's everyone. So I don't know that there's a short answer to that, but it's definitely a consideration. It's just another point of information for the city council as you're deliberating. We were contacted by the HOA president, Lynn Maximuk, requesting some additional signage just to alert vehicular traffic that there are golf carts in the area. You would think intuitively people would know there are golf carts in the area, but just like we post signs that there are deer, we should probably alert drivers that there are golf carts. And so Jean has done some research and we found the appropriate MUTCD guided signs to sign that appropriately as well. So staff is absolutely happy to do whatever the city council directs on this item, understanding that there's not an easy solution that's going to make everybody happy on this one.
Well,
Is it the main reason we did this or talked about this a couple of weeks ago, though, was because of safety, wasn't it? On, can it, like a fire truck be able to get through there or an ambulance on days?
I would not be comfortable answering the width or distance for the fire access question. I will say in my time here, I've not been contacted by the fire department that they haven't been able to access Falcon Lakes Parkway or get through Falcon Lakes Parkway. We certainly have members of the fire department here in the audience. But safety is a concern for all of us, and finding that balance between the pedestrians, the golfers, the cars, the business interests.
Sure.
Finding that balance is not an easy fix.
So how's council feel about, what would you guys like to do?
I certainly had concerns when there was the discussion of where parking was backing up all the way where it prevented access for emergency vehicles. I think, I'm open to restrictions in certain areas, restrictions on one side of the road or the other, and looking at the other no parking streets, many of them are just one side or the other. And so that would allow for some parking, but potentially prevent that worst scenario where it's backing up right at the intersection there.
Councilmember Maples, that's an excellent point. That's actually just what I was asking, consulting with the city attorney on is, perhaps the immediate compromise here is to sign one side of Falcon Lakes Parkway from K7 to 147th Street as no parking more immediately. And then with the understanding that the goal here is to alleviate parking from that street long-term, both sides of the street. But that gives us some, I think perhaps a compromise to, I'm sure we're going to be in Mr. Stripe's busy season. We're approaching spring. And we certainly I don't believe it's anybody's intention to place an undue burden on his business. We want his business to be successful. We want everyone who's using the area to also be safe.
I like that idea, Councilman Maples, to where maybe initially we could just do one side and then allow the owner time to look at costs and development of a parking lot that might get that traffic completely off the road down the way.
Would that date need to be stated in the ordinance? I mean, I'm guessing if you put forth a motion, you would have to state it pretty clearly that you're going to do no parking signs on the north or south side of the street. And then with completion on X date for the other side.
Right, yes, that's a good question. So in a motion tonight, if the council makes one, we would need specific language on, the direction or which side of the street where we would be posting no parking sign. This particular ordinance doesn't need to foreshadow future no parking signs. We would just come back with a different ordinance down the road whenever the time is right, and then address the other side of the road. And then you could, if the council would like to have this finished tonight, as far as the one side, you could change the language in the ordinance, just modify it here, and then we would draft that change for the mayor's signature, as long as everyone agrees on the language and makes that motion.
We have a recommendation on which north or south side we want to put no parking signs.
But I wonder about sightlines. I know north is certainly the more convenient for parking for the driving range, but that's also where the concern is. It's backed up into that intersection. So I would lean towards no parking on the north if that's acceptable from a sightline perspective, or preferable from sightlines.
You have more residential access coming off the south side onto Falcon Lakes Parkway. If you also wanted to entertain a motion to distance from the radius of Falcon Lakes Parkway from Clubhouse Drive to mark post 50 foot down past the radius, no parking here to the corner of Clubhouse Drive. that would still allow the parking on the north side along the driving range, then post all of the south side. That would allow your emergency vehicles to make your radius of the turn coming off the clubhouse or vice versa.
So if I'm hearing you right, on the north side of Falcon Lakes Drive, 50 feet from Clubhouse Drive? Okay,
And go no parking from that point towards Clubhouse Drive.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of keeping the parking away from the homeowners that would be more located on the south side. You know, and then it is more convenient, I would assume, for the golfers that it's on the north side to park. But I like your idea for sightline and safety to where you don't want cars too far up where people are trying to turn in, you know, to the main clubhouse. That's my thought on it anyway, but.
Mayor, council, I don't know if this would be at all helpful or beneficial, but if the city council desires, we could bring this item back at the April work session. We could actually schedule a special city council meeting so that this item is still being addressed in a timely manner. But that would give us an opportunity to perhaps diagram exactly what we're talking about in the distance.
Yeah.
Give Mr. Strife an opportunity to look at that. We would also share it with the HOA so that they're aware of this change. And if there's any additional feedback that residents in that area wanted to provide, that would give them an opportunity to do that as well. But city staff was contemplating asking potentially for a special meeting at your April work session to get our KDOT project under contract for the trail portion of the civic campus. Anyway, and this, we could take this item up then. And again, it's not a significant delay. It's a couple of weeks, but it gives everybody some additional time to react.
And that, yeah, I completely agree on that.
Yeah, I like
I
that.
think that would be the best thing to
Yeah.
move to the April work session.
And so in terms of other direction, I think 50 feet sounds good, but if there's some feedback from the fire department on distance from the end of that median that's ideal or recommended or something, that would be
That way we can
worth
get
considering.
everybody's opinion and have it all together and discuss it in open session and go from there.
And just with the amount of traffic, and we understand that this is not only an access point for Basehor citizens, but it is one of the best and most direct access points from unincorporated Leavenworth County to get back over to K7, particularly now with Parallel Parkway. We understand that, and I think it's probably worth asking our engineer just to take a quick look at it as well and just finalize those last details. So
Totally agree.
we will, if it's acceptable to you, we'll bring this back in April, and I think I would respectfully request that we have a special city council meeting so that you can take action.
Do I have a consensus from the council?
one moment. In regards to what you're gonna bring back, you're gonna bring back specifics around where the no parking signs are gonna be for the interim. Are you also gonna bring back the deadline for the interim, at what point, what date then it would be for which it says no parking on both sides of the street? Are we
So-
looking at both of those right now?
Yeah, so our suggestion, just based on kind of the discussion this evening, is that we would bring back a diagram similar to this one that actually just shows specifically where we would be talking about placing the no parking signs and then where that distance is from the site distance triangle for the corner. So that diagram. Second, the ordinance, and based upon what I'm hearing, I think we would have the effective date be immediately upon publication. And to the city attorney's, earlier statement, we would limit that just to this specific item. But I think in our messaging, Mr. Strife's hearing what we're saying, our messaging to the HOA will say something similar, which is it's the city council's intention to make Falcon Lakes Parkway no parking both sides in the near term.
Okay.
It just gives everybody an opportunity to be, I think, noticed and provide any feedback they have.
Perfect. Thank you.
Does everybody agree? Move it on, move it to April, move it to the April work session.
And with your
as a
permission, we'll have a special city council meeting in April so that you can potentially take action as you wouldn't be able to in a work session. Is that
Okay.
acceptable to?
Yes.
Yes.
So we'll fix your electronic signatures on that notice based on tonight's direction.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, to number 12. Acceptance of easements and right-of-way for Baser connected projects, 155th Street Improvements Project and 158th Street Parallel Trail Improvements Metro Green Project.
Thank you,
Maddie?
Mayor. Maddie Waldeck, Assistant City Administrator. We are happy to report that we have received 6 additional easements for these projects. Those are tract 19, which is the school district, tract 24, which is the Dollar General, tract 69, which is the Baser Community Library, tract 74, which is the Miller family, 75, which is the McClure family, and 77, which is the Creek Ridge Townhome Phase 3 HOA. We did hear today from the Creek Ridge Phase 3 HOA that they actually had to go to a vote, like we talked about in previous meetings. And they had 2 items on their ballot. First, do they approve of the easements? And second, are you interested in donating the entire parcel to the city of Baser for an extension of Tomahawk Park? And they had 34 votes. We had 34 yeses on both items and 0 no's. So I think that speaks to that particular area of the community's excitement around all the connectivity that we're bringing to that area. So we're pretty proud of that. As Maria had mentioned in previous communications, we did file the condemnation petition. We apologize for the last minute agenda revision, but we want to make sure that that petition is updated so that those folks don't have to wait an additional 30 days before this item is back before you. So 6 down, 6 more to go. And hopefully next month we'll have some additional items. So we would respectfully request your authorization to accept these easements.
And when is the other 6 if they don't sign? When is the date?
We filed the petition in district court. I'm not sure if Maria has a timeline in mind, but I believe that the court date will be set with the district court and will be notified as such. I think we had estimated 120 days for the entire process to be complete. And then that way we'll be on schedule with the Kansas Department of Transportation by that July 16th date.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So is there any questions for Maddie before we go into a vote?
That's worth it. Thank you. Good job.
I need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we approve the acceptance of additional easements and right of way for the Baser connected projects. 155th Street Improvement Project, 158th Street Parallel Trail Improvement, Metro Green projects as presented.
Have a motion to have a second.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. I'll take a vote. Vernon.
Aye.
Hayden.
Aye.
Ben.
Aye.
Sherry.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Moving on to item number 13, resolution 2023-03, approving certain changes to the Baser fee schedule.
Thank you, Mayor. The convenience fees that are charged at the city for credit card and debit card payments for things like utility billings and permits, that is included in the Baser fee schedule. We use the contractor Invoice Cloud. We were notified that they are raising those convenience fees. Because we are a government organization, we are allowed to charge those fees for processing those types of payments. The fee has increased for utility credit card payments is from $2.95 to $3.45. And then for non-utility payments like a permit or something along those lines has increased from 2.95% to 3.25%. The minimum fee for that particular charge did not change. So the resolution for your consideration would authorize us to update the Baser fee schedule as appropriate. And then also includes language that if there are additional changes to the convenience fees, that if the city administrator reviews that information, that she has the authority to update that as appropriate. So we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Anyone have any questions for Maddie?
Basically, that becomes a pass through
It is.
Yes, that's correct.
and I'm guessing there's not a ton of providers for that and they're all increasing rates. So there's not a really good opportunity to look elsewhere.
That's correct. We try to keep an eye on the market and for government payment processing, it's even a smaller group. And so we try to keep our finger on the pulse and we just, anytime an increase comes up, we'll do our due diligence to research and make any recommendations as appropriate.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
That was mine, so.
Need a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve resolution 2023-03 approving certain changes to the base rate fee schedule.
Have a motion to have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. I'll call for a vote. Vernon?
Aye.
Sherry?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Hayden?
Aye.
Passes for all. Moving on, city administrator staff reports. Chief, I'll start with you and can you please tell us where you stand now about having a full staff?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. We are still too short.
Short.
We had a couple of hopeful candidates that were as hopeful as we thought. So, we want to make sure that we hire Mr. Mr. Bright, as opposed to Mr. right now.
Yeah,
We've a good cohesive unit, and we want to keep it that way.
absolutely.
One of the things that we're working on diligently is recruitment. That's on the forefront of everybody's mind, so I would say the entire crew is looking at ways to improve that recruitment and retention, obviously, is at the forefront of everybody's mind. We're currently working on replacing some vehicles. Finding some vehicles has proven to be more challenging than we originally had thought, but I think there's an end in sight. And then I'm working closely with Deputy Chief Oblinger on some grant opportunities for the 23 calendar. Ever forward.
Anybody have any questions for the chief? Great jobs, chief. Maddie?
Thank you, Mayor. My update is very brief, but I am eating, sleeping, and breathing the sales tax election and the communication efforts around that. Just being a resource for the community and answering questions. We've seen a lot of success with our Friday posts, just the facts about sales tax, and we try to be as responsive as possible on social media and try to keep a finger on the pulse in that respect. So for any members of the public that are listening to this meeting, if there are any meetings or HOAs or anything like that, that they would like the city to come and speak about the sales tax election, we're more than available to do that. We have a couple on the books. And with that, I'm just excited about the election and all the communication efforts. So thank you.
Maddie, I just want to say too, that I follow it on Facebook, all your answers and everything. You do a fantastic job on the way you answer the people, a lot better than I would do. And so it's a good thing you're doing it, but yes, you do a very good job on answering some of those people that some of them are pretty tough. Gene?
Evening, Mayor, Council, Gene Miracle, Municipal Services. I've been working on reviewing different documents with staff. Reviewing the complete street phase 1 mapping to make updates. So we can have a final meeting before that's posted. Been directed to do some information research for the asbestos abatement for the properties across the street. So hopefully I have that information for Leslie by the end of the week. We went through about 2 tons of coal patch in the last week. So we're excited to get into some warmer weather to get some hot mix going. So
You didn't use near as much salt this year as you usually do. So will that be okay? I know it sweats, but will you be able to use that? A lot of that still next year?
yes, out of what we had ordered, we only received it in incremental funds totals. So we didn't get it all in one shipment. So we actually still have 100 tons that we can get ordered in if we need it, but we're not held to it.
Does it usually sweat enough during the, in the humidity that it stays good?
Yeah, with the open end on the domes that we have, it gets good air draft through.
Thank you, sir. Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor. I hope you all brought your calendars. I know Councilman Garber is out right now. But we were trying to set a date for the governing body retreat. So again, those dates that we were tentatively looking at, I know Councilman Fields, you said you were out April 20th, but May 3rd, 4th, or May 11th would be a possibility.
Is that on the latest email request?
Yes.
I can't do it on the 4th.
You said 3, 4, or 5? Or
3rd, 4th, or 11th.
Yeah.
3, 4. Yeah, I'm okay for any of those.
Third would be my preference, but I can make the 11th work.
I have no problem with the 3rd.
I'm in.
Carrie, you good?
I'm good.
Just in the off chance that the 3rd does not work for Councilman Garber, can we use the 11th as our backup date?
Yes.
Yes.
If I don't block them off right
Part
now.
of the reason we asked you all to bring everyone's calendars, the staff did not feel comfortable advancing a governing body retreat that didn't have all members of the governing body present.
And it's gonna be out at Falcon Lakes.
We are actually going to meet at the VFW this year.
Oh, okay. That works. So the 3rd for the first date and the 11th for the backup date.
Yes,
Correct.
And if you can't make either one of them,
I would ask that, I mean, all kidding aside, I would ask for direction from the governing body on how you want to proceed. If neither of those dates work, do you want us to come back to find another date, or do you want us to proceed? That is really not a decision for staff. This is your retreat.
In my opinion, I think everyone should be there. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's certainly valuable.
Yeah.
And I know it seems like we've been looking at, we started on Fridays. That didn't work for
Yeah, Fridays weren't
anybody.
working.
So I don't know what timeline staff needs, if those proposed dates need to be Mondays or Tuesdays of time ahead of that.
So if those dates don't work, then we will ask that you bring your calendars back to the special meeting on April the 11th, because we're going to set a date then. And we're going to keep coming every meeting until we find a date.
So I do understand that it's important to be available. Some of us have unforeseen things that pop up. So if
Absolutely.
we just cannot be there,
Absolutely.
we just need to just kind of set the date and just move forward.
Thank you. That's all I had.
So will the special meeting on April 11th be at 7?
Yes, it would be in advance of your work session as we have previously. So it will start at 7 and then your work session will start immediately thereafter.
Sorry, that's actually 12.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it must be
Yeah.
a different date.
Yes, April the 12th, whatever the second Wednesday is of the month. Ignore me. I was looking
Okay.
at your
All right,
another different month.
April now. I'm just trying to make sure I get all these in here, special meeting.
For the, no, for this, she's asking about the
12th.
special meeting. Yeah.
what time is it gonna start on May the 3rd?
So in the past, we've typically started around 9 AM and then we try to be wrapped up 2 at the very latest.
Okay, sounds good. Crystal?
All right. We had a Board of Zoning Appeals meeting last night. Last week, we had a planning commission meeting. Staff, we have received a couple of pretty big developments, proposals in the last couple of weeks that should be coming forward on hopefully your April and May agendas. We are still just in the process of going through the code and identifying areas where we need to tidy up language, application processes. And we have, staff has really started to undertake the zoning amendment update pretty seriously. We're meeting multiple times a week to just plow through the code and get it updated and get it moving forward. Other than that, not much.
Good job. Thank you very much. Cameron.
Thank you so much. I do not have any updates.
Really?
That is not true.
I move at the direction of my supervisor.
You sent a presentation tomorrow to the Kansas Department of Parks and Wildlife on your grant. that you
Yes.
submitted in November.
Yes, tomorrow I will be presenting, asking their monies. My project proposal was regarding Baser City Park and redoing the trails out there. Approximately 1 mile of trails and completely redoing those, so. Presenting tomorrow.
Awesome. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job. Maria.
No specific projects to report on, just continuing to be a resource and collaborate with other staff on the projects that they report on.
Okay. Is Christie online?
No.
Okay. Leslie.
Thank you. So I think Maria definitely undersells how much support she has to provide to those of us who report on these projects. It's significant. So huge thank you, Maria, for all that you do. I know that the chief wouldn't share it, so I will share it. I think we are really very fortunate in this community to have a chief that is as mindful of resources as he is. Sourcing vehicles, as he alluded to, is not only challenging, but in some cases nearly impossible. And then finding and sourcing a vehicle that is a reasonable cost is even more challenging, particularly with the specifications that we have to have in order for it to qualify to be used for our needs in policing. As such, the chief actually approached me, and I know that it's going to be very difficult for him to part with the oldest Ford Taurus that is in the fleet as the chief car. But he is actually going to take the city admin vehicle that we have here, which is a Ford Explorer, which is in mint condition because it has served our needs and it has served our needs well, but it will definitely it still has several years of longevity and it will make a great chief car for our chief. And there are not a lot of police chiefs that would, one, come up with the idea to take a used car that's in the existing fleet and use that as their chief vehicle. So I just want to say a huge thank you to him for that. And we're going to take the Taurus. And it's going to be the admin car when it is needed here at City Hall. It's going to be great. So we're not giving that one up just yet. Also, a big thanks to Gene. He has been working on making sure that these properties across the street that the city council authorized purchase of last year, and we finalized that transaction in January of this year, that it can actually those properties can go to good use and be used for training purposes prior to their demolition. And so we've been working very closely. Maria actually drafted an agreement for us to share with the fire department, but wanted to make sure that we understood the environmental conditions of those properties before we send that release to Fairmount Township. The police department is not intending to use those properties for training, so they will be exclusive for Fairmount Township's use, and then we will tear those properties down shortly after their training is concluded. So it's really truly a win-win for everybody's needs. I will also note that we've made an excellent connection with Senator Marshall's staff member. Her name is Tammy Bartunek. She actually has a student in the Baser Linwood High School and lives very nearby, and she's proven to be an excellent resource in sending grant opportunities to us. So she recently sent some information, and we're exploring other ways that we can again continue to find external dollars to bring into the city to offset project costs, which I think is fantastic. And I would just end with, while Maddie says that she lives and breathes nothing but the facts about sales tax, she also lives and breathes these various projects. And I think the fact that we received a 34-0 vote to give easements next to a park that has recently been constructed and opened and also has additional phases coming is really a testament to her communication style, her commitment, and just accessibility to everyone in the public that has had any question about any project that comes up here. And these projects would not happen without her tireless efforts in making them come to life. So thank you, Maddie. It's been a great day. And I mean, 6 easements left. That's pretty darn amazing.
What is it, 51 down, 6 more down?
Yeah. So
Great
I'm
job, yeah.
really proud of this team. So
Yeah,
that's all.
absolutely.
Thank you.
City council members report. Hayden?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank staff again for the Tomahawk Park opening. That was a blast to see my boys being part to break it in, and they've already been back a couple times, so it's a hit.
Awesome. Ben?
I'll second Hayden. Kids also had a wonderful time and my wife was present for your presentation. So she said you did a wonderful job, Maddie. Just wanted to give you kudos from Miss Jennifer.
Sherry?
Yeah, March 6th, I went to the Tomahawk Park ribbon cutting. March 9th, I went to the Leavenworth County Economic Development meeting. March 14th, I came to the Planning Commission meeting because there was a lot going on with that particular meeting. Today I came at 5:30 and attended the Leavenworth County Transportation Stakeholder Meeting. And then next week, March 28th, I'll be attending the Mayor's State of the City address.
Thank you. Vernon?
Yesterday I had the pleasure of being present at the Leavenworth County Port Authority meeting. And I was joined by Crystal, and I asked Crystal, since she did the city part, to provide some of the feedback, and then I will go ahead and add to that. So Crystal, if you don't mind now, please.
Yeah, of course. I'm so loud. I hate talking in the microphones. Yes, it was a fruitful meeting. Certainly, there was quite a bit of discussion. The main topic, there were two main topics, I guess. The primary topic that I think we're all the most interested in is the presentation we heard this evening. And basically, they kind of just went over essentially what we already heard. Also, there is a company that wants to come into the Urban Hess business park. And there was quite a bit of discussion about how they're going to get access to that park, because apparently when it was platted, the access onto Tonganoxie Drive was severely limited. So there was a lot of discussion on how they're going to go about making this work for this business that wants to come in. There were several good ideas, and I'm certain that they will power forward with a solution. I think those were the two main things. What did you say, Councilmember Skips?
Yes, Dan, thank you so much. We also spoke a little bit about the Land Search Committee. We have an outstanding committee member. We're looking forward to that kicking off within the near future. There was a conversation that the Port Authority had about the Basil Linwood High School students doing some drone videos. We did approve a budget to offset, the cost associated with that up to a certain dollar amount. So they also wanted to recognize the students at Basil Linwood for their contribution. So, as this gets moving forward, we'll see, we might get something from the Port Authority that acknowledges that. Unfortunately for me, I have to cancel all meetings next week. So I know that's kind of a personal thing, but it's just something that popped up. So that's it.
Thank you, Vernon. Mayor's report, as everybody knows, State of the City is next week. Thank you, Maddie. You have done a fantastic job helping running the speech and putting the slideshow together. If any of the council, I know Vernon, you can't be there, but if the rest of the council can be there, I know you have a commitment in the morning, but hopefully you can get there in the afternoon. It's amazing when you look at the slideshow, how much we got accomplished last year because of you guys and the wonderful staff that we have. I have not 11 years on city council, honestly, never worked with such a professional staff. And it's all because you guys' hard work and the new hires that we have that is doing a fantastic job. That's why this city is moving forward. And I was even shocked the first time I went to the slideshow and everything, as how much we did get accomplished last year, and I cannot wait to present it to the public next week. I don't know how many, do we have any tickets left, Kathy?
So, it's for that.
Left.
Left.
That we sold so far.
Oh.
I think we have about 15.
About 15 left. So if somebody's interested in the city, please tell them to come listen to what we have to say, because it's very informative of what we've done here as together as the staff and as the council the last year. So I know Councilman Maple said something about the park. I drive by the park almost every day. Last week was spring break, and I'm telling you, it was awesome to drive by. And I even had 4 phone calls. People said, thank you for putting this park in because my kids are having a blast. That's what we're doing it for. I mean, it's awesome. And to drive by there and see all the activity there is great. And it's going to get better. April the 22nd is Earth Day. Tammy Potts is putting together some teachers and council members and some of their school board members and everything to pick up trash. The city's going to donate 200 bags, trash bags and gloves, everything. I'm going to be there. So from 9 to 11, if you guys can come help pick up some trash and get the city back to where we're looking good again. So hopefully the weather will cooperate that day. But again, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank the council and the staff for being so professional and work and doing a great job. So we have an executive meeting. Oh, you just ruined everything I just said. Oh, okay. So, and
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve a motion to recess into executive session for approximately 10 minutes to discuss potential litigation involving privileged legal communications from the city's attorney pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2. The justification for the executive session is to keep attorney-client privileged matters confidential at this time. City Council will resume its regular meeting in the council room at approximately 8:47 after the executive session is concluded.
have a motion of a second.
I'll second.
Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we return from the recess for executive session, having taken no action to return to the regular.
I have a motion, or a second.
I'll second.
Motion, a second. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We need a motion to come back in the regular meeting. No?
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn.
To adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Second, motion second. Everybody say in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.